I will rely on oral tradition and also historical documents. The most earliest evidence that I have seen is by a Basque anthropologist, Miren, I forget her last name. She went to Liverpool, England, and came across a document where Basque fishermen came from somewhere west into the Atlantic Ocean and came back with evidence of a very thick and glossy fur of beaver and cod, and some evidence of rendered oil from, we don't know if it was whale or blubber from walrus or seal or whatever. But anyway, there was some examples of this that were brought back to Liverpool in 1325 by the Basques. And this was pretty well about 100 and almost 200 years before Columbus arrived here. And the Basque fishermen relied on the boat building specialization of the people from Italy that built the boats for Columbus, along with the Basque boat builders. So a combination of the Genoan boat builders and the Basque boat builders were able to build these ships that would repel them across the ocean and back. So the earliest, I would project to say, and this is only kind of documentary evidence that it has not been published yet, that shows that the Basque were here in our coasts, I guess, as early as the early 1300s. So I believe the connection there is linked to the language that we have, that we use. Like today, I have this shirt on. I call it Adlai and Tadlayim, Adlai. And the Basque word for this is Otore, Otore. Otore, and like I was mentioning earlier, the R is not pronounced. So Otore becomes Otalai. And AI or AY, it depends on which dialectical influence that you have among the Basque people, because some Basques say Otorai, it's like almost saying my other eye, but for the indigenous people they would say Adlai, Adlai and Tadlayim. So that's one of the first languages that has been studied by Dr. Peter Bakker, who is from Holland originally. He's Dutch, but he works out of the Aarhus Museum University in Denmark, and he has looked at the trade language. He calls it trade pidgin language. Is a language that was developed, used mostly by people trading. They kind of developed a language of trade, combining an indigenous language and a language that, like maybe the Basque language and Mi'kmaq language. So Adlai became one of those words. And kakunawe is another word meaning this hardtack biscuits that were those that were used mostly by European sailors to use, maybe to soak it in water and make a soup out of it, or grind it down and make a bread out of it, render it into sort of like a yeast-based kind of thing to make bread. So this kakuna was used in the trade, and the Basque are known to have traveled as far as the Tadoussac River on the St. Lawrence, and they have in fact rendered whale in some of those islands, Basque Island, I think it's called, along the coastline near Tadoussac, and in Rivière de Loup, there's an indigenous community that is called Gakuna, so Gakunawe, and Rimouski is named after Ulmuchkig, the land of the dogs. This is where, in oral tradition, say that the wolf, combination of the wolf and the fox and the coyote, was domesticized by the indigenous peoples there, and it was called the area of the dogs, Ulmuchkig, which became Rimouski, Ulmuchki. So that in its context are those trade pigeon Basque relationships that the indigenous peoples had. So we did have an early contact relations with the Basque people, as well as with the Vikings. So there is a connection to those people that came and explored and landed on our shores. And I think a lot of the oral tradition speaks of those cultures, because some of the legends that Silas Rand recorded, the Mi'kmaq, he recorded them in Mi'kmaq and then translated them into English, and they were posthumously published in 1888, after he died. And so some of them kind of ring of stories of European cultures, about Jack and the giant, and Jack and the king, and the king's daughter, and those things. But I think if you were to explore those oral traditions, it probably speaks of other cultures as well. And they have not been systematically analyzed. And I think it's a good area for somebody, if they want to study oral tradition and Mi'kmaq culture, that's an element that really has a lot of, it's rich in a lot of knowledge, education, and I think it's worthwhile for somebody to do lots of research in depth. While Mi'kmaq speakers are still alive, those words were captured by Silas Rand and some of the other early writers too, like Maillard, Abbé Pierre Maillard, and before him Leclerc, Christian Leclerc. And even Nicolas Denny recorded a lot of Mi'kmaq words. So, and knowledge and things like that. If somebody were to gather all that and kind of, there's such a rich resource to our oral tradition, and the basic elements of our culture and values and principles are embedded in those knowledge systems. I think it's vibrant. This area is rich for lots of research.